Preparing to live stream. All right, let's do this. And then, of course, I'll send you a copy and download it and all that fun stuff, however you want to use it after the fact. Okay. So here we are. We are live. I have a very special guest with us today. Welcome to the Igniting Financial Freedom podcast. Today I have Ilana. She is originally from South Africa, lives currently in Zurich, Switzerland, right?
Yes.
And so she's about 6 hours ahead of us. So I wanted to make sure that we have a time that works best for her. But Ilana's coming to us today. She has a focus on your money mindset. She's a money mindset coach, which of course I'm very passionate about. We're kind of in the same sphere, but her specialty also is in Neuro Linguistic Programming, or NLP. So I'm excited to hear her take and her background and her experience on that and how she helps her clients with that. We're going to dive into quite a bit about how your behaviors, how your past, how your almost your programming, if you will. We had some quick dialogue prior to the episode here, but how your childhood and how your behaviors and your habits really dictate a lot of your behaviors just from your daily life today. And so welcome to episode 29 of the Igniting Financial Freedom podcast. Again, Ilana, welcome. And if you want to go ahead and maybe just introduce yourself and give us a little background and how you've got to where you are. And like I mentioned off the air, I'd love to hear your story with just, debt payoff and your experience with money and all of that.
Sure. Thank you, Clark, and thank you for having me today. I'm really excited about chatting about this.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of things. The one thing you mentioned was about patterns or behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to just explain something because this will put a lot of it into content of what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We have two minds. We have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. All our thoughts and beliefs are sitting in our subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
That takes up about 95% of the mind, of the brain. 5% is in the conscious mind. So you can consciously want to do whatever you want to do, set a goal for something. 95% is telling you from your inner child, from your childhood, that you're not good enough because your parents said something one day to you, or it's telling you that you're going to fail. Why even try and do what you're going to do? You know that you're going to fail. Or it's telling you you're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's telling you something that is not serving you to be able for you to reach that goal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's continuous conflict between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind.
So
We've
true.
taken on all our parents' beliefs and patterns. They've become our behaviors. They've become our patterns. We watch our parents doing things. If you think about a toddler, you teach them how to clean their teeth or tie their shoes. They learn eventually how to do this by themselves. You've watched your parents from birth to early teens. Everything that they've done, you think is amazing. And you copy them. And it could be drinking too much that your dad did if you come from an alcoholic family, or spending too much, or whatever it is that they did, you saw and you copy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, parents, children, doesn't matter what their age is, will have the same sort of lifestyle that their parents had. They will emanate it. We don't even realize we're doing this, but what we're doing is taking on our parents' DNA, their money DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, our parents or grandparents grew up in a very different time to us, that they maybe went through the war, some war of some sort, or they went through some sort of struggles. So there was a lot of lack, a lot of scarcity. We live in with that. So what do? Because we've been told there isn't enough, we make sure that we spend, or we get into debt, or we use the credit card because we're worried that in our mind that there isn't enough. But we're actually living in a society very different to our parents and grandparents, where there's more than enough. There's so much abundance. It's all around us. But yet we choose to see the lack. I grew up in this household, coming back to what you asked me about filling in about my story. I grew up in a household like this, where I knew about lack and scarcity and poverty. And I always say poverty doesn't touch a certain race, religion. It can touch anybody. My mum was widowed at a very young age and had 5 kids to look after. And she worked 2, 3 jobs. I knew what it was like to see a mother struggle. I thought this was life. I knew what it was like to go without and to be different to kids at school. And I must have vowed one day that one day when I grow up and I get married, you think these thoughts become your actions, because this is what's going on in your subconscious mind. I vowed that one day when I have children, I'm going to give my kids everything. They're going to have private schools, fancy cars. They're not going to have the car that they're embarrassed that their mother comes to fetch them from school. They're going to have everything. And literally, when my kids did come along, I did exactly that. Without processing it, without thinking about it, I overindulged them. They had designer clothes from babies. Half the time, they never even wore them. Private schools, the works. What happened was that I got into a serious amount of debt. I was spending much more than we were earning. I wasn't taught at school or at home a healthy relationship with money. So when the one credit card was full, I would literally go and get another credit card. And the banks are very happy to give you credit. Very, very happy. The shops are happy to give you credit. You can come and buy all these beautiful clothes and everything and pay it off at the end of the month. You can pay it off in 6 months, in 12 months, whatever. Shops are very happy to do this for you. You can buy whatever you want. And this is what I was doing. My husband comes from a very different family. He thought I was completely nuts. And every time at the end of the month when the credit card statement arrived, we used to fight like you've never seen fighting before. We would fight about how much I was spending. He would tell me, woman, keep a budget. Can't you keep a budget? I didn't know what a budget was. I didn't even know how to spell it. I knew how to spend.
Yep.
And it got to a stage where friends of ours knew that we were always fighting about money, because I was always angry with him. He was angry with me. They said to me, when you're sick, you go to a doctor. When you've got a toothache, you go to a dentist. Why don't you actually go and get some help with this money situation? And I'd never heard of a money therapist. I'd never heard of a money coach. And I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
I had to do a quiz, which tells you, which I've got the same quiz on my website, which tells you about which archetypes, money archetypes, are driving your behavior. I had all of them. I had the tyrant, I had the innocent, I had the victim, the martyr, all of them. And I said, letter for this, I'm not doing this money coaching. I don't want to be called all these horrible names. The fool was one that I took huge exception to. Eventually, it got to a point where my husband basically wrote me a letter and told me that I needed to go and get this sorted out. And I went. And the work that was done, the work that we did, I actually did group coaching, was unbelievable. It touched so many areas of your life. It doesn't only touch your money, it touches everything. It touches things from your childhood right into your adulthood about why you're doing what you're doing, where those beliefs came from, where those money myths came from, what your parents told you about money. Money's evil. Only rich people are stingy or nasty or cruel, or if they've got money, they're bad, and all these things you grew up believing. All of that had to be redone and rewritten. And I had to change my thinking.
And is that how you think? You think how that subconscious is overcome? So that 5% carries more weight or has more influence by the rewriting of those thoughts?
You can program it. You can program like the same that you tell a child every day something, whatever you tell them, they grow up to believe that. We've been grown up to believe that money is evil. The rich are rich, the poor are going to stay poor, all of those things. That's a mindset.
Yeah.
The poor want to change and become rich, they can.
Yep.
It's not work on, do the work, put things in plan, don't be a fool and only plan for Saturday night, think about the future. I always say when you're planning for your future, you're not robbing yourself, it's your money.
Right.
You're just not spending it right now. So yes, that you need to look at where those beliefs came from, how you got into the situation you got into, and change it. You cannot do the coaching without wanting to change.
So it's funny you bring up I love the analogy of your husband and you and the difference, because I can certainly relate to your side of the equation. I'm was and still am the spender in our relationship, and so it's funny because when I graduated, we both went to the same college. My wife and I went to Michigan State up here, and I had my parents help me with tuition, but they had to take out student loans to cover it. And yet, so I worked over the summer. I had a lawn company, a lawn business, with a buddy of mine, and would save up a bunch of that money, but it would go throughout the course of the year. And then there were, chunks of money from the student loans that I would use from my parents to basically fund my lifestyle, up in college and buying beer and going out to eat. And I ended up and then my wife on the other end of that spectrum worked her tail off all throughout college, took out a minimal amount of loans, but was basically, it was her responsibility to cover it and to pay it back and to manage it. And so she ended up graduating college with less debt than I did. And I had my college paid for. So it was like, we had a very serious conversation. Like we were moving to the next steps and getting more serious. And it was like, look, like you need to grow up a little bit, like take ownership and be responsible for this, and so that's good. It was a good learning lesson for me. Like, hey, you can't live so high on the hog and continue to overspend and, going and get new credit cards. Like you said, get more cards, get more credit, and just so that we could continue to keep the party rolling,
Absolutely.
So maybe you could speak to that too. If how do those conversations start from, it's different from both of us as the spenders, because I think we maybe both had an awakening, but if there's somebody who's listening who is more the saver, pretend your husband or my wife are listening and they have their spouse as the spender, how do they wrangle them in without acting as their mom or dad? That's tough.
I think it's the conversation about money. It's the conversation. Couples don't talk about money. I do couple coaching, and I have couples that come from very, very different backgrounds, and we get them to talk about money. He understands her story because I get them to swap it. She understands his story, where they came from, where they are, and what are the plans they're going to make as a couple going forward. Now, in actual fact, I'm the one that is always pushing back when it comes to saving, because I've worked so hard to get out of the debt, to build up my business. My husband will say, we're going on holiday. And I was like, not so fast. Like, slow down.
Yeah.
Is the money in the bank for it? Yes. Well, we've got to do this dentist work or whatever, I want to save. I want to build up a fund. So, we've got kids, one's doing his master's at university. So I think that there's got to be the conversation about money. There's got to be planning. You've got to have long-term planning. Is there money in your pension? Is there enough money for you when you stop working that you don't need to turn to your kids? I've got lots of women that I work with that have got a whole culturally very, very different relationship with money, where they look after the families. Are you set up for this? What is your responsibility to your family? What is your, is it dysfunctional or is it functional? There's such a lot that we don't even consider that needs to actually be discussed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Well, and we were talking before we went live here about a client of mine that I was helping, a coaching client, and I kind of mentioned to you, like, I didn't I didn't force her to do anything. She already had the conviction, and that switch had already been flipped, right? And it's like you have to want it bad enough to sacrifice now for something
Exactly.
tomorrow, right? Whether it's
Robbing yourself.
overspending or over drinking or eating too much or whatever, right? And you talked about basically almost like complacency or just kind of being
Tolerances.
satisfied with the current life or current status. So I thought that was interesting, because we can't flip it for them. I can certainly guide somebody along the way, but they've got to want it more than I want it for them.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the time people get tolerant with how much they take. For instance, I work with a lot of coaches, and I've got a lot of health coaches that I'm working with. And they tell me things like, and I know this because I know the reason why I worked with him is because I needed my own health coach, because I needed to sort my health out.
Mm-hmm.
You get to a point where if it's not painful and it's not really causing you much harm, that you just leave it and you just kind of, it rolls.
Yeah.
And it's the same with money. It's the same with everything else, until it gets to a point where I need to actually fix this. I cannot take this for one more day, that you make the sacrifice to say, how do I change this?
Mm-hmm. So true.
So
it's
you
like
tolerate it. If it's a pain that you have, if it's arthritis, for instance, or there's pains in your knees when you walk, you can tolerate it. You can take a tablet for it. But getting to the crux of why it's there, because you're eating gluten or you're eating dairy and, and it's flaring up, you've got to actually get to the root cause. And it's the same with money. Why is it that we have more month than money?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're doing something that needs to change.
So good. So if I'm wanting to change, like we said, right? You can lead the horse to water, right? If I'm ready to change that, but I've got, maybe not the best experience growing up. I wasn't guided with, from my parents on how to spend money, and I have a tendency to overspend and have a bunch of debt. And I'm also probably maybe going out to eat too much or overweight or have other addictions that are also just kind of there, because it's, again, we talked about, it's all related. How does that NLP, that neuro linguistic program, how does that enter in? And maybe you could even give a couple examples of, here's my old pattern, or here's my old wiring, and now here's something I can introduce as almost a replacement, if you will, to start changing those thoughts.
I think it's really about wanting the change, as you said, realizing that staying the way it is going to harm you. It's not actually going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
When you realize that you're in control of your life, not your parents, you can take action, and you can take, I always say, when you're old enough to drive a car, you're old enough to lead your life and stop blaming everybody else. We did grow up with things that we saw our parents. We did grow up with, maybe it's traumas that went on in our families, because lots of families have trauma, ancestral trauma. However, if you allow it to control you for the rest of your life, you will be exactly the same way in 10 years, in 20 years' time. And your kids will be the same way as you. If you decide that this has to change, I'm at the point now where I'm not taking this. I'm not waiting until January. The other day in my group with the training I was doing, I was saying, have you set goals for this year? Yes. Okay, it's middle of the year. How many of those goals have you met? Some. Well, are you going to wait till January before you set again? Or are you going to say, now, between now and the end of the year, this is what I want to achieve? What are you going to tolerate? And is it because the benefits or the payoff is more exciting than doing the change? Then you're not going to change. Right. If, for instance, you know that to change And you mentioned eating, so let's take the eating. If you know that it's hard work to change not going out for so many meals, it's easier just to continue the way you are. But if you know that it's going to affect you in many areas, it's affecting your health, your bank balance, your future savings, you decide. Let's look at a menu for the week and not eat out so much and eat more in, eat healthier and change the situation. You are in control to change the narrative, to change the outcome. We all are able to change, and that's why people work with coaches, because by themselves it's quite hard to change. I couldn't change it by myself.
Right.
You work with a coach, you work with a mentor that helps you, gives you step by step, that gives you the tools how to change it. I've got clients who have got businesses. They've got money behaviors. They're running their business like a hobby. It's not making money. They work with me. After 2 weeks, they're making money. I show them how to do it. And they're like, this was right in front of me all the time. This is not it's not rocket science.
And the behaviors, I would imagine, the thoughts and the changes apply to business.
Comes, and you need to keep working on it. When you get that feeling of fear, because a lot of the time we don't do things because of fear. And as I say, fear stands for false evidence appearing real. You're fearful that your business is going to grow huge and you're not going to be able to spend time with your child, and that you're going to be so inundated with all this work that you're not going to be able to have balance. So you don't do anything. But you're in control of that. You can say, I don't work on this day, or I stop working at this time, or I hire people to help me. It's completely up to you. You are in the driving seat. You're not that little child anymore where your parents said what you must do and what you mustn't do. You control that. And every single thing you do, your children are watching you. And I know this because I see that in my kids.
So true. I can attest to that too. I have 3 little ones. I have a 9, 6, and 4-year-old, and it's more what you do than what you say, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They mirror you.
Yeah.
I do a lot of exercises with my clients mirroring about who they're mirroring, where it comes from. So if you want your kids to have the same outcome as you, then you don't change things. You keep it the same. If you want them to have the best and the possibilities and the opportunities and choices, you look at the way you're doing things. And you say, do I want to keep doing these things, or do I want to change it?
That's so good. Could you give maybe just a quick definition, or maybe take a step back, of what NLP is for those who aren't familiar with it?
We look with NLP, we look at how people are programmed, how people have got, where fear comes from, where they've seen opportunities. So, for instance, we see that a lot of people are very set I'll give an example, try and relate it to the money. People are very set in their ways about doing things. So often when I ask people, can you do me a simple exercise which tells me where you see your past and where you see your future? A lot of the time, 90% of the time, especially when they've got debt and when they've got a lot of stress, they will say, my future's over here, or it's up here or something, and my past is here, or it's down there.
Yeah.
Those people, that tells me, and I should have asked you to do it, that tells me that the past is still very much part of their lives. They can see it all the time. That it's not something that they've worked through. They've still got many, many things that they've got to work through. When somebody's done the work and you ask them, for instance, to do that exercise, they will tell you that the past is here behind them. It's down here somewhere. They can't see it. The future's right in front of them. So they are on a journey. NLP helps you to see how people perceive things. Often when I'm talking to somebody, they will tell me, I had a client a while ago who told me she was a relationship coach. And every time she spoke, the eyes went to the left. And I thought, why are her eyes doing that? You're going to go and get information because this wasn't actually true. She was told that she needed to, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, be a relationship coach because there were so many other life coaches.
Yeah.
She wasn't in a relationship. She'd never done relationship training. And she was trying to teach her clients how to get clients to do relationship coaching with her. And she couldn't get clients. And she came to me. And whenever she spoke, whenever I asked her about this relationship coaching, the eyes went to the left. NLP teaches me that she's going to go and look for information that's actually not true. I'm not saying that she's a liar, but she's trying to justify.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't there. When your eyes go differently or your body language goes differently, you're recalling a memory.
Yeah.
So it tells me a lot about how they're thinking.
So when you gave that example, and for those, listening on the podcast, you kind of said, when your past is still almost a part of you, right? Your left hand was out in front of you, to your left, out in front of you where your eyes could still see it. But if your past is truly behind you, and I get the sense of almost you're living in the present and then still looking forward for tomorrow, right? Planning for tomorrow, but living right now, so to speak. You made the gesture of literally your hand behind your head, as if your past is I see this visual of almost like two giant suitcases of whatever you were carrying, right?
Exactly.
And you've set them down and you're just walking forward. You don't turn around. You're not looking anywhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's such a powerful.
And it could even be bad habits. It could be bad habits. It could be things from your parents that you've taken on. They say, the Bible talks about the sins of the fathers passed down to the sons. Often people that come from an alcoholic background, there's tendencies for alcoholism. So when you've given that up, when you've done the healing, when you've said, I'm not going that same way as my parents. I don't have the lack like my parents. I don't have the scarcity like them. I never lived through the war. I don't have to spend the money because I'm worried that there's going to be somebody in my family that's going to steal it because there's been some sort of incident in I've heard lots of families about this where an uncle stole all the money, the inheritance or whatever, or the kids' inheritance. So a lot of the time the person is spending the money as quickly as it's coming in because they're worried they're going to lose it and they don't know why they're doing it. That's not, you need to know what your reality is.
Yeah. That's so good.
There's emotions around money. When I speak to people, I always say to them, they say, okay, you're a money coach, what do you do? I say, well, if I ask you, money, what emotions come up for you? A lot of the time I hear fear, credit card, debt, not enough, bills, where there's another whole side of money. Money creates opportunity.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is opportunity was the first word that came to my head.
Gives you choices. It helps you to outsource. You can have 3 VAs and people doing stuff for you. This afternoon, give you an example. It's afternoon, but an hour ago, I was talking to my son. It's his birthday, lives in London, and I was thinking, I've got work to do. And I thought, no, I actually don't. I've outsourced it. There's the developers working on something, the one VA is working on something on social media, the other one's working on stuff that I need for my landing page. Chill, speak to your son, relax. Money gives you that opportunity to do that. Where you're not chasing every single penny.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, and it's, freedom is the other word that came to mind for me. And I didn't mention this to you yet, but my wife and I and my sister-in-law were pursuing a co-working business, a co-working space here in our town. And, it's just another income stream. It's another business to manage, but it's really exciting. And that's exactly what I think of because of the income and, the revenue and the savings we've been able to, accumulate, quite frankly. We've been able to, that door has opened and we're able to pursue that. And then it creates it just creates more freedom for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always say money gives you choices. It opens doors to opportunities and to freedom, for you to do the things that you want to do, to give your kids the life that you maybe never had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're coaching the clients you primarily coach. You mentioned again prior to this call, were also coaches, right? You said a majority of them were.
I've got about 80% at the moment, and that are coaches themselves that become a coach in a particular field, but they don't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
So I've got the business side. I've had my own business since very young, very successfully. And I've also done business courses in marketing and PR. So I understand business. Then became a coach and I put it together with obviously with the NLP, and I've built it to the lifestyle, out of the lifestyle that I wanted. The coaches that I work with become a nutritional coach, a health coach, a spiritual, healers, KonMari specialists, all sorts of different types of coaches, but they don't know how. They run their businesses like hobbies. So they're working hard, they're stylists, fashion stylists, they don't know how to make money. And that is what I help them with. I help them a lot to believe in themselves, to grow their self-esteem. A lot of people, their self-esteem has been knocked when they're young. Their confidence has been knocked, which will create a sense of I don't deserve. And when they feel this, they're not ready to show up in the world. They're quite happy to work behind the scenes and not put the business that people find them. I've helped them fix that. I've got a mini course called the I Am Journey, and I help them to fix the feelings of not being good enough. If you think about it, everything is framed with I'm not good enough, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm too thin, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm not clever enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not, oh my gosh, I should have done this by now, I should have sorted out my money by now. That's my best phrase that I hear from every single client. Girls in their 20s to women in their late 50s. Should have sorted my money out by now. And I always have such a giggle. And I think, well, you're now because you're ready. Everybody frames stuff with negativity. We learn to do this from our parents. And what that does is it creates a feeling of not being good enough, not having enough. And when you realize that you are enough, your confidence is higher. When your confidence is higher, you feel you deserve whatever there is out there for you. And you're ready to show up.
Because I even just said that to myself in my head just there is I am enough, right? Because there's tendencies as a business owner, right? Starting my coaching business as a financial coach and starting this podcast and even going live with you here, right? My initial thought was, okay, we'll talk for a little bit and then in a week we'll have this episode so I can prepare myself mentally. And you're like, let's just do it now. And I'm like, so my brain was like, whoa, brakes, stop, red light. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, why not? Like you said, like, let's just roll with it. And it's like, screw it. Who cares? Let's see what happens. And we're live and we've been a half hour or so, and it's been great. So that inadequacy or that, imposter syndrome is what I call it a lot.
Absolutely. That fear.
It's there all the time, but it's just, I remind myself the 12 years I spent in financial services, knowing about money and knowing about retirement planning and personal finance. And then I remind myself of all of the people I've talked to and helped, maybe just something very minor, but also some other people very, very impactful and very monumental in their lives than I've been able to impact them in a positive way. And so that's where it's like, oh, okay, you stand up a little bit taller, you feel that confidence because it's like, hey, I do know what I'm doing. I might not know what I'm doing in every facet on how to start a Facebook Live on on Zoom, but I figured it out.
Who cares? Who cares? You know, Clark, one of the things we learn in NLP is to reframe things. You know, talking about rewriting your stories, reframing things. A couple of years ago, I was asked to speak at Google, and it was a live talk long before COVID, so people were calling, and I just literally become a coach. And I was thinking, oh, it's fine, no one's going to come and see me anyway. Like, I have got no confidence, no clue what I'm actually even going to be talking about, but I was invited to come and speak. No one's going to come. And literally, it was very short notice. I was convinced no one's going to come. It was a morning session with women, trailing spouses, as they call it. The husbands were here for work at Google, and the wives came with. And they asked me, can you say? I said, sure. How many women how many people have signed up? And I remember it was very, very short notice, like 2-3 days. 39 people are coming to listen to you. I'm thinking, holy bananas. Like, I've never spoken to 39 people. I'm such an introvert. I have got such an issue about this. I don't know how I'm going to stand up there. What am I going to wear? How am I going to look? Am I good enough? All these thoughts going through my mind. And I remembered something I'd learned at NLP, which is the fear in my brain was massive. It was the size of a rugby ball. But the desire was also big. The desire to go up there and do well and speak and get clients to sign up with me, even though I didn't know what I was doing, was also massive. But the fear was much, much bigger. Fear was this rugby ball, and the desire was a ping pong ball, a golf ball. And I realized that in my mind, I had to shrink that rugby ball. So that rugby ball became a soccer ball. And I said, okay, now you are the size of a soccer ball. Now you are the size of a tennis ball. And I could see it in my mind, because your mind's powerful. Now you are the size of a ping pong ball. The desire, you've gone from a ping pong ball, you are now a tennis ball. And I could see it. I thought, how will it feel if I got these people to sign up with me, even just 1 or 2 or 5? What would I do? Oh, I'd have this money. I'd be able to get somebody to help me with my website. Okay. Then I thought, if it was bigger, if it was a rugby ball, what would I be able to do? I'd be able to put money in the bank, into a savings account, whatever. And I replaced the fear with the desire. Now I speak at Google. I had a call in January at 100 and something people on the call. And it was like, just give it to me. Like, I don't care. Like, I know I can speak about this.
That's
a lot of the time, and that's what NLP teaches you. NLP teaches you to reframe things.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's desire.
I used that last night, not even realizing technically what I was doing, but I was at a networking event, and it was a real estate investing networking event. And I was there, one, just to learn more about investing in real estate, because it's always been a passion of mine. And also just in the context of my coaching business, in the context of this co-working business that we're starting. You know, the meeting was in town where I live in Brighton. And, you know, it was a room of 110, 120 people, something like that. And most of them, at least from my perception, were, you know, dressed in suits and professional and could be multimillionaires in real estate. And that was, you know, at first blush, it was intimidating. And then I start looking around, I'm like, these are just regular people. Like, they put their pants on the same way I do. Like, they're no better or no worse than I am. And so I'm like, you know, and so you said minimizing that fear and maximizing that desire. I'm like, you know, I could meet somebody who could lead to some type of opportunity. And at the very least, I'm meeting somebody to help them feel a little better. So at first I saw somebody on the other side of the room who was by themselves, and I'm like, all right, I'll start there, you know, and then by the end of the night I had met, you know, a lot of people just by kind of getting the wheels rolling, you know, and I kind of got warmed up almost.
Yes.
And then had a great event. So interesting, very interesting.
That's fantastic. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to touch on, maybe for the audience here, regarding anything we covered, anything you want to expand on?
Sure. If you wanted to know, one of the things I didn't talk, I mean, I spoke about it very, very briefly in the beginning, was the different archetypes that drive your behavior.
Oh, yeah.
There are 8 different archetypes. The archetypes come from the Swiss psychiatrist and philosopher Carl Jung. And these archetypes are characteristics of why you're doing certain things and how you're doing certain things. There's 8 different ones. For instance, the martyr. And I'm not going to go into all of them.
Sure.
The martyr is one that a lot of people have. They feel that they can't charge their worth because they're not good enough. They often give things away for free because they think that there's no value in what they're doing. They need to learn on the other side that what they're doing has got value, or they need to figure it out so they can create value. But a lot of the time, the martyr, as I call her, the mother of all archetype, is only used to giving and giving, obviously with conditions, because she wants to get something, she wants to get maybe control from someone. So she gives with conditions. Mm-hmm. We all do things in a certain way. We all have got our characteristics and our traits that is involved around money in our business and in our personal lives. I have got on my website an archetype quiz that when you do the quiz and you spend time just answering the questions, it will tell you which characteristic is driving your behavior, and often is a combination of a few. For instance, if you have got the innocent archetype, and I said I wasn't going to go into another one, the innocent archetype or the victim archetype, you would do things very differently than if you had the magician archetype or the hero archetype. Mm. The victim is going to be keeping you stuck. You're going to only see the negative. You're going to be living in the past. When we had money, or when we had this, or when it's the when we's. So by understanding these characteristics, you can change them. You cannot change something you don't even know about. So it's becoming aware of your behaviors.
That's wonderful.
That quiz is on my website, mindformoneycoaching.online. Take quiz, it's a free quiz. You can then join the mailing list. There's a short course on there as well about the I am journey, about how to help you feel good enough, better about yourself, and ready to be seen in your business to actually make money. Or there's a group program starting in September. So yeah, mindformoneycoaching.online. Go and take the quiz.
Mindfulmoneycoaching.online. I'm going to be taking that quiz as well. I'm interested. That's really cool. Really cool. And this is one you created, right? You said it was kind of based on this individual, this Swiss individual, right? That kind of.
Yes. So basically, Carl Jung designed the archetypes. The Money Coaching Institute, where I studied through, has a quiz, but this is something that we've enhanced. My husband and I have enhanced it because it's just fitted more in for my business and the work that I do.
Outstanding. Wonderful. Okay. So you've got some value to add there to the listeners, and I appreciate that. I think that then maybe, unless there's anything else you wanted to add, that might wrap us up for episode 29 of the Igniting Financial Freedom podcast. Stay tuned, and we will have additional episodes where we will address and answer your biggest questions related to money, or in this case, address some of maybe your mental blocks or some thoughts that are holding you back from some of your either childhood experiences or anything in between. So, Ilana, thank you again for your time. This was great. This was really interesting just to kind of dive in and see, some of the, like we said, some of the baggage that we carry with us and some of the issues and hurdles, how we can just set that down and, like we said, walk forward and live for today and plan for tomorrow. And really good stuff. Thank you.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to do it again. Thank you so much.
Cool.
All right. Thanks.